You are watching Co-op for Two. I'm Jesse. I'm here with Greg.
Thanks for having me on your channel.
And today we're doing something a little different. We're going to do a discussion mainly aimed at sort of newcomers to cooperative games. And it's going to be called something like How to Be a Good Co-op Teammate. It's going to be called something like How to Be a Good Co-op Teammate. Mm-hmm. Strategies for getting along well.
Or maybe you could give, not so subtly or subtly hint to someone like, hey, you should watch that. Maybe check that out.
That's great. That is a great idea. And even think about this. If you're playing with a troublesome player who's not cooperating well, send them the link to this.
So there's like a number that you can give, like if someone is like hitting on you and you don't want, and you give them this number, they're like, oh, here's my phone number, and then you call it, and it's
really?
Yeah, and it's like
that's
not
very clever.
Right? So it's a way to like sort of get out of that situation.
Very clever. So, okay.
It's kind of like that.
So first, there's two preface statements I want to make. The first one is this. There are basically two, I classify cooperative games in two different categories. Mm-hmm. One where it's very structured communication. Mm-hmm. You might think of like Codenames or Hanabi. There's no, you don't have to figure out an interpersonal way to cooperate. You're just play by the rules. They say this is the only way you can communicate, and you just try to win. You don't need this video for those games. This is for games that we tend to prefer, where you're just really working together to make every action. And okay, so that's setting the stage. Now, I thought of sort of a paradox of cooperative games that I wanted to present. This is sort of my theory of approaching these games, which is that to really have fun, you have to treat the game seriously, right? If you're not taking the decision seriously, then you're not going to care about anything. So on one hand, it's like life or death making the right decision. Until there's a disagreement. Then you have to be able to step back and say, it's not life or death, right? That's sort of the nature of play. You're pretending that you're going to die if you put your foot in the lava, but if you're getting into a fight about it, you have to be able to switch.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think in general, and this applies to competitive games as well. You have to, in order for the game to have any meaning to you, you have to treat it seriously. You have to try to play by the rules. You have to try to play to win. Otherwise, if somebody's like, oh, like Dead of Winter. I remember playing Dead of Winter with some friends, and one of the players didn't do the rule where like you were trying to get your personal goal done, and so we all won, but she didn't. She's like, I'm fine. I'm okay to live with that. I'm like, well. The game is kind of set up to like that's part of the difficulty.
Yeah, you're ruining it for the rest of us if you don't take it seriously.
But it wasn't how she felt about it, right? So like in a way, it's like, but that's kind of baked into the difficulty of the game, and it's like you must treat it seriously in order for it to be a game at all. Otherwise, like who cares, right? You could just throw your pieces around the board and say, what does it matter? But just like anything, you have to like be able to just be relaxed enough to just say that's just a game. It's like
that's right. That's right.
It's
a little bit of an interesting paradox. That
is a very interesting point.
Okay, so along those same lines, here's my reminder to you: the true goal of playing a cooperative game is not to win.
Yep. I'll let you finish this up.
Well, we have a slight disagreement about this in terms of the way we approach these things, but the real goal is to have fun.
Yeah, I agree with that, of course.
Yeah. And
I mean, I do really want to win, and I'm like trying to win really badly, But the thing is, like, when the game's over, I'm not going to remember if I won or lost. I just want to enjoy it. And, that's the thing. Like, I mean, and I think, like, look, I have a lot of faults, but, like, something that I feel like I'm right on the money on is the fact that, like, I love playing the game, but if it's over and I haven't won or what, it doesn't matter to me. I don't remember whether winning, I want to just enjoy.
Yeah, and if there's two of you playing and one of you is not having fun, then it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. You failed. You have failed because you have not helped the other person have fun. And the other thing, we're slightly different on this, but for me, like I play these games to have stories. So win or lose is better if you have a nice story. Okay, but just remember, your overall goal is not to win.
I don't know your heading, so I'm going to say something here, and I'm sorry if it kind of runs into something. Like, you're saying your true goal is not to win, it's to have fun or whatever, but like, kind of like coming to the table. So my wife and I, like, she'll be like, look, I'm sorry, I don't want to play that game. Like, she doesn't like to play anything. I'm a huge nerd, right? I am. So, like, I'm like, of course, I want to play, like, Dungeons & Dragons, these type of games. I want to play superhero games. I want to play fighting. She doesn't like to play anything where you have to calculate defense dice and attack power, like, where you roll stuff and add stuff. She doesn't like Dungeons & Dragons theme, and she doesn't like
certain themes she doesn't like and certain mechanics.
She doesn't want to play this, and she'll be like, I'm sorry. I'm like, there are, like, 20,000 board games, 30, I don't know how many there are now. It's in the tens of thousands, I would assume. And it's like, it's okay. There's something else to play. And like, if your partner doesn't want to play that game, don't play that game. Because like, they're not going to enjoy it, and ultimately you're not going to enjoy it. And so like, there's enough different themes and there's enough different games out there that like, you sort of don't want to lose at the start. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a good point. Find a different game. Okay, so.
Yeah, there is a game for you. Sorry.
That's fine. So the heart of all of this, of being a good co-op teammate, often is compromise. But compromise could mean different things. Sometimes that's easier said than done. So I've listed a couple of strategies for sort of thinking about compromise. And here's one I like to adopt, and I think we do this too. When you come to butt heads with someone and you disagree about what to do, one of the things I like to do is like, I want to get my case out there, make sure it's made, and I'm on the record, so that I can point to it if something goes wrong. Like, as long as I want my case made, and then if it's heard and I've made my case, and we still want to do something else, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The heart of any game is the decision space, right? Like. A game is interesting, and of course this is almost my opinion, right? But like, a game is interesting if the decisions are interesting. And, you're flipping a coin, is it heads or tails? Well, that's not much of a decision, right? You're playing like Le Havre, and it's like this long chain of like 2 hours of a decision you've made. Like, that's what makes a game is interesting. And so when you can have the best cooperative games is when, when you really break it down and like, you're like, okay, if we do this and then this, and I go here and we do this, then we'll have, and you work like for like 10 minutes to discuss what to do on a particular turn, or to set up a couple of turns. And that's playing the game, and that's exciting. And so like, you should make those cases, and if you're going to make those cases, obviously as a decent human being and a good game partner, you have to listen to those cases. But no, don't just listen to them and just be like, okay, I've heard you, now we're going to do this. You really got to stop and think, like, because people oftentimes are like, well, I'm arguing my point for this argument or whatever. But like, you should always approach an argument or discussion like with the idea that you could change your mind. Because if you're not approaching it in that way in life or anything, like, I mean, that's,
yes.
You have to be able to like, otherwise, if two people are just going to argue about something where they refuse to change their minds on, it's pointless. Like, it's a pointless discussion. You have to go into things and say, like, it's like, make your case, and I will see,
Yeah, but it's beyond that. What you're saying is absolutely right. But it's not make your case, convince me, and I'm the adversarial person trying to argue against it. It's better to do it from the opposite end. Like, be enthusiastically looking to be convinced, or looking to be talked into it. Be completely open about that. But sometimes that doesn't work. Occasionally we'll play a game and we're just not going to convince each other. And then you have to get more advanced. And I've made a list of them. Sometimes you just say, sometimes a way to do that is you say, it's not that important. Like, yes, I might disagree about this being the optimal one, but sometimes you have to step back and say, is it really going to make a difference?
I mean, if you watch the channel, like, I'll do something sometimes, or I'll say something like, this is like what we have to do. Like, I'm like, there's no way that this isn't the best action. And like, like, I'll listen to what Jesse's point is or whatever. And sometimes I'm like, okay, like, I still think my plan was really good, but you've convinced me with something that you said that like, it might be slightly better to do this other plan.
Sometimes you convince the other person,
or like, you do something where you're like, okay, well, let me do part of my thing because I think that was what we needed to do. And instead of doing the other part, we'll do your half of it because that makes sense. You made a good point, and you make some sort of Frankenstein monster between the two of your
That's a good thought too. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
And but sometimes you also say, well, I'm going to let you do this. We're going to go with your way this time, even though I don't agree with it because it's your turn, or we've made a lot of things. Or what I like to do often is I say, well, I don't agree with it, but let's try.
Sure.
Let's see what happens.
So I think in general, like that's, but just to kind of extrapolate, on it, is like that's the whole game, is making these decisions. And so like if you have sort of like, if you're both invested and you're having like sort of a heated and exciting exchange about this, or like, oh, what if I do, that's the whole game. So take your time and discuss that. Like,
that's good. That's a good point.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But think of yourself as having a little, look, some people are natural. They'll just compromise and they're not going to have a problem. Yeah. But for those of us who can get stuck, think of yourself as having a little bag of tricks of how to cooperate and compromise. And sometimes those tricks are just things that say, I care about the other person having fun, and if this is going to make them happy, it's okay. Or the experimenting. I love the experimenting thing because I'm so big into like, oh, you want to try this chocolate that is going to taste bad probably? Well, let's do it. Let's try it as an experiment.
And then you can talk about how bad it was.
That's right. We're gonna get to some of that later.
Okay. Well, but I do want to mention too, like, there's two things. Firstly, like, no, I forgot what the first thing was, but I'll do the second one. This is probably what you shouldn't do, but Jesse and I play a lot of games together, a lot of cooperative games and stuff. And when we recently played Endangered on the channel, like, I did something that, like,
oh, that's right. You did something that I don't remember you doing before.
I made a move that would block him from doing a different move because I didn't want him to do that move.
Did.
So it was sort of very, like, I was like, we need to do this other thing,
pretty
Jesse.
Passive-aggressive.
It wasn't passive-aggressive. It was just aggressive.
Yeah, but it was a unique
but it was a very unique case where I was like,
that deserves a special section in this discussion. We might have to come back to that. Yeah, that I wouldn't advise that as a compromise.
No, that's why I say, because we know each other so well, and I knew that I could do that, and not destroy our friendship.
That's like in the advanced level course.
It's pretty fun.
Okay, but I do want to remind people this. I talk to people all the time that are so sure. They're sure about everything. This is the way things. And I advise you to be a little more humble. Not you. I'm not talking to you, but like in general, be a little more humble about being convinced that you're right. If the game is good, it's not going to be so easy to know what for sure you should do.
Yeah, well, I think sort of that and the previous point, like, something that, like, I found, first of all, compromise is, like, I think the ability to compromise is one of the best skills that you can learn in life. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
Like, I've learned as I get older and older and older, like, it's like compromise is so important with everything.
Absolutely.
And part of, like, that is, like, sort of the pick the hill you want to die on, philosophy of, like, is this the battle? Is this what I need? Figure out what's important. It's like, is this really, like, that important? Okay, I'll let this one by. But then eventually you have to, like, when there's that thing that comes along that you need to fight for, then that's what you fight for.
Boy, is that a life
it's
lesson.
Such a huge
is
deal.
that a lesson about being an adult, learning choosing your battles.
Especially in relationships. Like, I think that's how you have, like, a successful marriage is to, like...
It's not only that part of the reason why that's so important, choosing your battles, there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's important. But one of the reasons why it's important is because you poison the well. Every time you have a conflict that you insist on having your way, you're putting a little bit of poison into that well. And when something happens that's really important, if you've poisoned that well, you're in trouble. Okay. So here's another skill. Being willing and able to put things in the past, forgive and forget. And board games are like, it's almost like it's a machine designed to teach you to forgive and forget. Like, that's what you're doing. You're playing this game where all of the tension and decisions are wrapped up, and you're meant to, after it's done, say, this is not important what happened. And being able to move on is like a superpower. And I love that way of thinking about things, like a superpower. Like, if you can do that, if you can not hold a grudge and
This is all, like, relationship advice, I feel like. Because I'm thinking like
you could use these discussions and slides
because it's so like
it's like
okay,
you absolutely
it really bothered me that you did that move. Couldn't believe how bad it was. Blah blah blah. Right, and then it's like, but that's it. Don't ever bring it up again.
That's right. That's in the past.
And bringing things up again and again. That's like one of the cardinal things you don't do in friendships or marriage or relationship. That's whatever.
Right. Although we're gonna put a little twist on that. But yes, I agree. Being able to say that's in the past. That's gone.
I can't even think of a single scenario in a game where like I've been like angry at somebody for having made that move or whatever.
No, you're pretty good at that.
No, I mean like other people to me.
We'll see. We'll see as we go on.
Is there an example coming here? Like that?
Just wait and see. Okay, here's our next point. Be generous with praise. It's free, costs you nothing to tell someone when they did something great or remember. And bad things happen when you don't make people feel good about what they're doing in their role. Even if you don't say bad things, like people get defense. I mean, again, if you're in advance, you've been playing with the same person over and over again, these things aren't that important. But otherwise, make sure you make people feel good about their contributions.
And it's hard to remember all the time, but like when somebody makes a good move, like sometimes I'm wrapped up in the game and I'm just not even, I'm like, oh yeah, and then go this, oh yeah, and then we'll do that. Like, and I'm like completely on that level, but like I really try to be like, oh, that's good. That was really good. And I try to verbalize that as much because people like to hear like good job.
You'd be surprised at how important that is.
I'll tell you,
I mean, how big a difference it is. And if someone's in a good mood, the whole game atmosphere changes.
Talking to friends or acquaintances or just, you're like pre-pandemic, you're online at the coffee shop or something and you're just chatting something. There's so many people that like to be like, why did you quit your job? And they'll just be like, they just didn't appreciate me or whatever, or like some stupid thing they didn't like say, and they just leave, And I think like we all need a little positive encouragement, like, and not a lot of people need like, I mean, I think there was some study, I think when I used to be like a retail manager and they would just be like, studies show that like, employees, like all they require is you to be like, hey, good job. Like you did a really great job with that today. And like, as long as you do that once every like week, then like they'll stay working for you or whatever. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
but it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. And it colors. It's like we know you see a movie, depends on the mood. That colors the way everything's interpreted. Yeah. Everything, one small comment.
A spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Okay, so here's the other side of that, which I think is another sort of skill, which is taking time to be the person that says, you know what, I did that wrong, or I was wrong about that. Especially if you have an argument about something. Like we played a game of Paleo, and we had
Is this what you were smirking at the camera?
We had a little fight, and I got my way. I got this thing. Remember, we split the skills, and
I was wrong. This creates a subheading. Always record your board game sessions because Jesse didn't just say, "Oh yeah, I was wrong." He had to watch the footage and realize how wrong he was.
It's true. I wasn't sure how it worked, but be the person who's like, "Hey, you know what? I was wrong there. You were right. I shouldn't have done it that way." And again, that's one of those things that it changes the tone of it. Like, and then, as humans, we're built to punish people for doing things that are wrong or out of the norm. Like, it's part of our genetic makeup to like punish wrongdoers. And if you play with people and they're going to take care of themselves, then you can say, you know what, I don't have to work. I don't have to be the one to remind them they did that wrong. They're going to do it themselves. And it makes it's more enjoyable for everyone that they aren't trying to police everyone.
That's so crazy. Like, I feel like this is again more of a life philosophy, but like something that people do that like makes me crazy. Like, it's just like when they make a mistake, they double down on it, even if they know they made a mistake, and you're just like, everyone in the world makes mistakes all the time. Just be like, oh,
it's true.
And it's like so much of the world's problems could just be solved when like it's just like, you know what, I was wrong there. And people are like almost like crazy.
Yeah, you feel like you forgot someone read you the wrong instructions of life that you can't admit you're wrong. Like
just say, oh, I was wrong, and then it's like, no, and now I have to double down on this mistake or whatever, and like if you're having an argument, it's like, no, I must just win this argument. It's like, you just I could see in your eyes, you just realize you're wrong. Just say, oh, I mean, I say all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm like Larry David when Larry David was like, look, he's like talks about how he screws up all the time. It's like I'm just like, yeah, I make mistakes all the time, and now I'm like, you know what, I made a mistake there. Oh yeah, you know what, you're right about that. Easy, done. and you're a human being. Nobody cares.
Not only that, but like I love that I've said before. I love that superpower way of thinking about things. But being able to admit you're wrong is a superpower. It will make your life better.
So here's something too. Now, so you have these slides, and I don't know what they are. So I might be running into some other points that you maybe have. But I'm going to do my little. So this paleo scenario, and because we're discussing this on the channel, not rubbing Jesse's nose in the mistakes that we made. We talked about a moment ago. But like, you know, we sort of have these two little fights, these two little hiccups where, you know, Jesse got super covetous of his tribe.
Protective.
And I was like, okay, like, you do see like that the bigger picture here. And you were like this was an unfilmed thing. And Jesse was like, just, you know, you kind of said like, you're wrong, you know, like you just let your guys die or something. I was like, what is happening? It was like, I was like mystified. He turned into Gollum, like, and I'm like, what is happening?
It wasn't that bad.
It was crazy, but it was that bad. So it kind of set us up for this other like on camera sort of like headbutt situation. And I think you got to look at the bigger picture, you know? Like I remember we were playing Zombicide. This is many years ago.
Not you and I. And someone else.
We've never played that together. Yeah, a couple friends of mine and I, and we were at the end of the game, and I was like, oh, you know, like, if you move here, like blah 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 blah, I was like, then we'll win, but this character here will die. And at that game, you were allowed to lose a character. And she was like, I don't want my character to die. And I'm like, okay, but you got to look at the bigger picture here, like, because I think we each had 2 characters or something. And I'm like, you're gonna lose one of your characters, but we'll ultimately win the whole game, right? And she was like, no, you know, and it's sort of this idea, like, I remember, like, when I used to manage retail, and, like, I remember, like, somebody had a project. It was, like, their project to, like, let's say, like, stack cans of peas. I don't want to do the actual analogy here, actually. And I was kind of like, well, you know, we need some, they were like, can I put some more shelves in here? I'm like, well, we need the shelves for, like, other more important areas of the store. But they're like, well, but I'm doing my project. I'm like, you have to look at the bigger picture here. And they were like, this is my project. So like I think like
that is true, but we should admit it's much easier to see and to say when someone else should sacrifice their character for the good. Sometimes we don't see.
Sure, but I'm just saying, like, you kind of get covetous of your own people or whatever, and it's you got to be able to look outside and look at the whole game.
I am going to return to that. I have one slide on that a little bit. Okay, so here's a useful one. Let's wait for Craig to read this.
I'm reading this out loud.
Okay, but the title of this slide is "Hold Grudges with Humor." So this is sort of an alternative, advanced technique to forgiving and forgetting, which is a way you could remember and hold on to the grudge if you do it with humor.
This actually marries a couple things together.
You want to read this, or should I read this?
So you're creating a story.
That's
which
right.
was one of your points.
Yes.
It's a memorable story. It's funny. You could tell your like friends or your spouse or whatever, and like be like, "Oh, this happened today" or whatever. You know, they might not care if you're like, "I rolled an 18, and then I, you know, used my card to bump that up to a 22, and we won the game." It doesn't matter. You know, they don't care. But like you could say like, "Hey, this thing happened," and you can laugh about it. So Jesse. Okay, so were you abandoned by your partner on a bridge and eaten by snake monsters as you distracted them so he could escape? So that's what happened. So we were playing a game.
I mean, this is
don't say what it is
because
it's got a spoiler attached to it. Right. But we played a game, and like we were in a scenario where like I said, okay, well there's no way you will escape. There's no way we could get you to escape.
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay,
but yes, that was the premise. That was your assertion.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, whatever. I wish we filmed it. I didn't think there was any way. There was no way for him to live, or it was going to be like. And I said, if you die here, it was kind of a campaign game, but it wasn't a permadeath.
As far as we knew.
As far as we knew at the time, but we thought like the first 20 of these that we played, you died, and the rule was that you just came back with like a slight tick down. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Like, and so I said, well, I don't think there's any saving you anyway. So for the greater good of the campaign, I think that I'm going to like leave with the victory, like the thing that we need to win, get the thing out of the temple.
Right.
And that you will have to die. and then you'll come back with a slight thing.
Right.
And I said, and I truly believe this, I said, if our situations were reversed, I would still make the same decision. And I really do believe that, because I think
You're pretty good about that. Okay. Yes, you would have sacrificed yourself.
Afterwards, we found out
that I was like, maybe you should. But
it was so it turned out to be a permadeath.
That's right.
Which was crazy. Died. And I did say, because he built his character up, I said, I'm fine if you want to play my character who's had some build up, and I will start a new one that if you want, or you can start a new one. So I can give you that choice.
Which we did do, and then Greg won't play that game ever again because he doesn't want to start with that character.
No, that's not true.
No, it's not true. But the point is that we had this moment. Yes, I do want to play it. We had this moment where we stopped and had this long debate about, Greg, don't run out for the exit. Come save me. And Greg was like, I can't come save you because it's too risky. And I was like, well, you could make it.
It was maybe, like a 99%.
Okay, so depending on your personality and how that would have happened, a gaming group could go either way. They could say, well, let's just die trying to save each other or whatever. But the real point of that story was that it created a story that we've told over and over again, and I told Greg a different 20-minute joke about climbing.
The next time we got together...
It's almost too long to tell this story.
I'm just going to paraphrase it. We got together, and he told me a long story about these climbers and stuff, which was a true story about a movie that he watched, which was very interesting on its own. But then as the story started getting close to the end, I realized... Like, it was like you were digging this pit and putting the stakes in there. And I realized, this is a trap. And I realized what he was doing.
I was telling this story.
Yeah. And
it's a story about a guy who came back for his person. Right, But the point is that, and this is a little bit of advanced technique. You have to be comfortable with the people you're playing with. But, like, that's an opportunity. That disagreement was an opportunity to have fun and laugh about it. And we still laugh about it to this day.
So, but the thing is, like, we should have probably said this earlier. And again, I hope this isn't in a future slide. But the thing is, like, you kind of have to start at the beginning, like when you sit down at the table and kind of feel out what you're like. If it's a gaming group that you're with all the time, that's one thing. If you're just going to pick up games at a convention or at a game shop or something, that's another thing, right? But you kind of have to feel out because you said, like, well, winning isn't everything. Well, what if you're playing with all, like, these type A people that only want to win?
Well, I have some slides on this, but it's absolutely true.
It's important to figure out, well, what does everybody want?
Yes, right? Yes. And again, we're going to get to that, but I'll just make my superpower comment. Like, I love thinking about these, but not having to have the last word is also a superpower. This gets to do with...
I don't know if that's true.
But it is, and like, it would be better to have, like, this is like the asymmetric thing. Like, it's fine to have some stories where you're the butt of the joke. Sure. Like, don't try to win every story. Don't try to win every battle. It's fun to be the person on either side of it. Okay. Now we're getting into a little bit more strategies for how to find ways to work with different people or different groups, and this is one that works for me. I don't know if it works for Greg as much, but give everyone a job so they can feel useful, like something to do. Even if it's like just managing the cards, like you be the person who do. Some people, and I fall into that category a little bit, like having a defined job. Like somehow that gives me some satisfaction.
You're saying like you have some function in the game, like you're saying in terms of the strategy, or it
could be in terms of strategy, like you be the defensive player, or it could be in terms of just like I'll be the person who manages this deck of cards. I'll be the person who shuffles.
Well, I just think like
there's something enjoyable about that.
In general, I think like whenever I play something where like there's multiple people playing, and it's very rare. I mean, but when I lived back home and stuff, like it was much more common, but like. It always made so much sense to be like, okay, you always put out the people, you always do the cards, everybody has their own job in terms of like, it just makes the game flow better. Like, actually, Zombicide was a perfect example. Like you always turn the cards over and you say, oh, we need 2 runners here, and I'll put the 2 runners, and then you say, we need a fatty over here, boom, boom, boom. And, and then...
It makes it flow better, but don't you think it's more in those people, like, there's some pride and control. Like you feel like you've got this. That doesn't.
Maybe not for me, but I do think that it's possible for other people. But I do.
You frequently take control of parts of the game that we're running, but that's just to keep them away from me so I don't reorganize them in bad ways.
Wrangle the pieces. No, but I mean, I think just for game flow, which actually speeds up the game, it's like it makes things easier. You know, UPS has this whole thing where like when you're in the UPS truck, like they want you to turn the key, pull it out, put it in this pocket, use this hand to take the pen. Like there's like a whole thing because they don't want you to stop at every stop and add 2 minutes to every stop to go, okay, where's my keys? You do it the same way every time and it speeds you up.
You're talking about for efficiency.
But it's not, but games being quicker, smoother, easier to set up, the gameplay, just everything about that, like
all that
increases the enjoyment for everyone.
Sure. All that is true. But I think this gets back to like, you don't like to run games. And I like to run games even if I'm not playing. Certain people, if you give them a role, a job to do, doesn't matter what that is, they feel like, okay, this is my domain, this is my responsibility, and there's pleasure, there's satisfaction that comes out of that.
Yeah, well, I think also like maybe in terms of if you're playing with like maybe some non-gamers or some people that are it's you're like okay, like you're playing. I don't know why I keep bringing up Zombicide for some reason, but like okay, you defend this area of the board or whatever. Like okay, well the orcs are gonna keep coming in this side. Like you come over and we're gonna have you like work on that.
I think it's a great way to play with people of different abilities or different involvements. Like you can say, okay, you don't have to understand everything. This is your job. And they're like, okay, good. I can
for a more complicated game or the kind of game where like 3 people know it really well and 1 person doesn't. It's like, okay, well this is your area of like, sure.
Okay, so here's a related point, which I think is important. And it's almost like a meta point, which is everyone should occasionally get to be the boss. Get to be deferred to, get to be the one to make the final decision. And for some people, you have to fight them to take that role away from them, like give someone else a chance to make the final decision.
Well, I think that's
but other people are more meek, and you're like, you make the decision this time. Like you have to force them to do that.
I think that the natural way to do it, and this is something that kind of falls to us or whatever, is that it's sort of like, well, we kind of disagree on it, but it's your turn, so you kind of have that final word, right? Like I think that's kind of a natural way for it to happen. But I mean, like, just in general, I mean, that's kind of...
I mean, sometimes you'll be playing with someone, though, who will defer to you on everything.
Is this kind of quarterbacking? Are we talking about that now?
A little bit. I will get into a little bit more. But I guess what I'm trying to... The point I want to make here is that everyone should get a chance to be the boss, even if they don't want to. I think it's an important part of the game.
No.
Okay, you don't... Yeah,
no,
okay.
Sure.
I mean, okay. All right, now here's one that I think we are all of us who are experienced gamers, when we play with someone who's not as experienced, especially with co-op games, we suffer from some degree of over hand-holding, and it's very tempting. So everyone knows, like, you would never tell someone, if you're playing a co-op game with someone, let's say your wife with the new game or whatever, you would never tell her what to do every turn, right? I mean, that would be ridiculous. You would never be like, you should do this, you should do that. But something that I find myself doing, and often when you're playing with someone and someone's teaching you, they'll be like, well, you could do this, or you could do this, but that would have this happen, that you could do this, and doing that, like sometimes you have to do that a little bit. But there's a big temptation to be like, I'm not going to tell them what to do, but I'm going to explain all their choices. And I guess this is just a little pet peeve of me. That is robbing them of some opportunity to make mistakes and learn what to see. Sometimes you're better off just saying, go ahead, make your best move, and it's not going to be right, it's not going to be perfect, and you'll figure it out. Like, you can't explain...
That's interesting because, like, when I'm playing with my wife a lot of times, like, I'll point out something else, we'll play a competitive game, and I'll say... You can do that. And I'll always say it like I always start off like that. That's cool. Like it's totally a good move. I'll say that's a good move. But if you wanted to, if you use this character instead of this character, and you did it in the opposite order, it would give you this additional benefit. And then she'll be like, oh, and I'm like, you don't have to do it. I always say you don't have to do it.
Completely understandable.
And then she'll say,
and I'm not saying don't do that all the time, but I am saying that it's very easy to fall into that habit of doing that and thinking, well, I'm not making the decision for them, but you're stealing a little bit of the puzzle from them, and I think sometimes it does more harm than good.
Well, I think sometimes just pointing out one little thing, like is when they're trying to learn the big wide, I'm not saying like if they play the game a number of times, that's different. I think like the game is still fairly new. You could say like, oh, that's it. I tend to talk about strategy quite a lot during the game, and my friends have told me sometimes, like many years ago, they'd be like, you know, you talk a lot about the strategy during the game, and it hurts you because then we kind of know what you might be thinking. I'm like, I don't care. I like talking about the game. Sure. I'll lose. I don't care.
I've played a game, and it's happened more in competitive games, but I played Eclipse, first edition of Eclipse. And next to me was a guy who was more experienced about the game.
Oh, yeah.
And he was trying to help me. And every turn when I would do something, he would say, basically what you're saying. I'm not telling you what to do, but you might want to consider you could do this. It's a little better. And the first time, that was fine. By the second or third time, I wanted to strangle this guy, and my whole rest of my game was figure out how to attack him. But like he thought he was helping by pointing out these options I might have missed. But you're robbing the other person of some of the fun of the game, and sure, there'll be things I don't see, but that's part of the fun is even after the game's over, saying, "Oh, I didn't see that." If someone's telling you all those things,
well, how about this? Maybe to say that you should, if you don't know the person, you know, like maybe one time is useful in the beginning when you, but I think for me, I happen to know my wife obviously very well, and so I'm able to know that me pointing something out like that will help her to learn the way the game flows, you know, because I'm not like doing I get that, okay, but we've kind of beat that up.
Okay, so here's something that I know we both sort of agree on. Some game designers are like, and some whole people think like a game has to be built to avoid the alpha player. This is one person quarterbacking it. And both of us have a different view of that, right? Wouldn't you say?
I think we have the same view of it.
I mean, we have the same view, but we differ from that view that games should be designed to avoid alpha players.
Basically, this is my opinion, is that like every time I see a game that tries to fix the alpha player problem, they basically make some mechanics that like are very negative of the game. It's like they basically throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know,
you can't talk about what cards you have,
it's so
or
stupid.
You can't speak.
They've put some rule in the game that makes the game no longer really like a cooperative game anymore, and they make it so that you can't really play the game together in any effective way. And they do it to keep one player from not, and it's like that player's still gonna figure out a way to like. Yeah. You know, it's so stupid to me.
So fix the relationship within the group to make to solve the alpha game, or don't fix it with rules.
So, and if you like, so for me, like when I'm playing a cooperative game, the entire time I'm playing, there is a level within me, a substantial piece of me, that is trying very hard not to say everything like do this, and it's like a real fight. And honestly, when we play like some of our longer playthroughs and stuff, you know, as I become weary from like, you know, 6 hours of playing or whatever, 5 hours of playing and filming and all this, like that ability to hold that back slowly starts to disintegrate. And like it can be a real problem.
Well, it's come up before, but it's not come up from me complaining. The way it comes up occasionally is you'll watch a playthrough, or you'll just remember, and you'll say, "I feel like I was too pushy in this game."
I just have a memory.
You're self-critiquing yourself. But that segues perfectly to this next slide, which I've called "Dealing with Personality Differences," and I think this gets to finding a group that you're compatible with. And my point I wanted to make here was, don't expect everyone to be the same, play the same role. You're looking at me because the computer sound went off. Yeah. So, but my point is, like, one of the reasons we get along well is I think we're pretty compatible there. Like, you are a little more, first of all, you're better at certain planning out detailed things.
That's true, Jesse. That's a good observation. See, that's praise.
But we're
Jesse.
also pretty compatible with the fact of like, I'm less. I tend to do less of that quarterbacking. I occasionally will speak up when I have a very strong feeling about this, but we're compatible in that. Like, that doesn't bother me at all for you to lay out some different possibilities and plans. And often, especially in certain games, you convince me about stuff. But we're compatible in that way. And I would just encourage you to, if you're playing with a group, I mean, you've got to find a way to work together. But don't expect everyone to be playing that same role, and that's fine. And sometimes that will happen, like this gets to one of these relationship things that's broader than board games. But occasionally when you get mad about something, you will start judging someone and you'll be like, well, you do this more than me. It's like, well, you knew that this is the tiger and his stripes. This is how our personalities are different. Everyone doesn't have to have equal role in every single thing or equal part to play. Just remember that when you get into a thing. Don't be like, well, you've been doing this the whole time. Well, yeah, that's what they do. That's the kind of person they are. Okay. And then I made one little note.
That's like, I'm like trying to figure out what to say on that, and that's like a whole nest of snakes there. Like, it's a whole bag of snakes.
Here's a point that we disagree on, or at least disagree on based on some things you've recently said. It's a game. It's play. And I think sometimes it's good to let the person, someone else, revert to being like a spoiled baby about it.
No, we definitely disagree on that.
So, like, we've had examples where we've talked about people who like get upset that they didn't get their card or whatever. And when I see that, like, we've got someone that we've both played with that occasionally does this, like, gets frustrated that they couldn't make their move. When I see that, I get a little smile because I think, well, there's someone who's so involved in the game, who's so embraced that they're playing, that they've sort of reverted. And this is someone who's like has a doctorate and they've sort of reverted to the child that wants that thing and gets it. And when I see that, I get a smile, like they're fully in it. They've forgotten how they look, how they're appealing, that they're making sounds like they're whining. And I'm
gonna disagree with you. I think that when two people get heated about the game, if you're like, because you're so invested in the game, you were like, no, we have to do this, you know, like that means that you're probably both really invested in the game and it's really important and exciting for you. And after the game, you know, as long as you don't carry this grudge around or whatever, that can be a sign that everybody's invested in it's a neat thing. But I think when somebody kind of turns into a baby, it's like, to me, it's being a bad sportsman.
I hear you.
And so, like, to me, like, I'm like, is it that you're invested in the game, or is it just that you didn't get your way, like the baby didn't get his bottle?
I hear you.
And
but
I don't like.
I'll give you another counterexample. And this is the same theme of sort of reverting to a primitive, childlike state. We play Seventh Continent, right? Okay. Greg's whole modus operandi for these games are sacrifice. Like, you got to do the hard thing. You got to leave the person to die. You got to kill the goat to get its food,
that
right?
Thanos, like, you have to have the will. Like,
that's right. And so Greg is usually very hardline about that. But then we came across this little egg.
Everything changed.
And suddenly Greg was a parent, and everything changed. Like, okay, there's no more taking risks. We got to sit here, play music to the egg. All of our life changed to taking care of this egg. Now,
well,
you could imagine that game was about the story. If that was me, Greg might say, you got to kill the egg, we got to eat. But I view that like, oh, Greg has reverted now. He's become like his primitive parent. And like, it wasn't about winning the game at that point for me. It was like, okay, we've got to go down this road. Like, let Greg be Greg. Let Greg have the little baby egg.
I do want to point something out, though. I think this is even on the playthrough that we played on this channel.
You did find another egg.
Is that I found another egg, and I was going to baby it and coddle it.
Did we kill it?
And we were starving, and we were going to lose the game, and I said, we're eating this egg.
We didn't eat the egg.
We absolutely did.
I don't think we did.
No, we absolutely did eat it.
I don't think we ate any egg.
Somebody comment below, because it is absolutely...
I think we just hatched it, but maybe we didn't...
a dollar bet.
Maybe we didn't play it music. The first time we played, there was music.
Well, in any case, but like,
the point is, but I think that's a time when you sort of reverted or whatever. And we've had similar things. Like when I was taking care of my paleo people, I was like, well, what's more important, winning or... But okay, you get the point. Yeah. We did that. All right. Okay. So now we're getting close to the end here, but this is more what if you're not vibing with your co-op game group? This gets back to what you're saying. Like, what if you're playing with a new group? And so I had a couple points I wanted to make here. First of all, like, it's hard. Different people adapt to strangers quicker. I don't. Like, when I play with new people, if a new person comes to sit down with my group, I feel like there's an interloper. Like, my primitive, like, I do not react well to new people joining. But it takes a while to learn someone's
I did invite
personality.
somebody else that should be here in a few minutes to have this.
It takes a while to get comfortable with someone and understand when they're being serious, when they're really going to get upset, how much ribbing, how much joking, right? That's not an easy...
That's a whole social thing. It's like huge...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
huge
don't
subject.
expect to play a co-op game with someone you just met and have it go perfectly. It might. You might connect really well, but it may take some time to get used to each other.
I'm going to let you talk about this, or I'm going to let you finish. I'm not going to comment too much because, to me, I don't like the idea of playing games with people I don't know. Like people love conventions and stuff, you know. That's totally cool. But for me, it's like when I think of just going and playing a board game with somebody I don't know, it's kind of like me going to hey stranger, at the bus stop, let's go to a movie together. It's exactly the same thing to me. You wouldn't, no one would ever do that. Or let's go to dinner or something. I mean, it's the same exact thing. It's weird to just be we're strangers.
Even for competitive games, because with competitive games, you're on your own. You're trying to win. It doesn't matter if you're not vibing with the person or connecting with. Co-op games is a whole different matter.
To me, it's
either way, you don't
taking Jerry at the bus stop down to the movies and seeing it.
That's interesting. All right, but if you're having trouble vibing with your group, I would make a couple suggestions. First of all, try 2-player. That's the lesson I learned. I don't play co-ops with more than 2 people unless it's a party game, because I just can't have that interpersonal relationship. I can't have that communication with more than one other person. Yeah. But so
there's a player. I was going to start a player count thing, but that's a whole other conversation.
But that was a surprise to me. I mean, it wasn't at all obvious to me why I was sometimes having fun with co-ops and sometimes not. Like Pandemic, I thought I love Pandemic. I'll love Pandemic. It never occurred to me that if I try playing Pandemic 4-player, I don't have fun. So if you're in that category, you might try that. But I would also suggest that, you have to speak up. If you're playing with someone who's quarterbacking the whole time, you have to be willing. Either don't play with them or be willing to say, look, I need you to step back a bit and let me take my turn and not tell me what to do, etc.
It's pretty hard to
it is hard. It is hard. Or go to the board game store and find new partners. People don't realize how. I mean, you just said something in the other direction, but for the most part, at least when we weren't in COVID, if you go to a board game store and there are people and you say, "Who wants to play this?" Just throw your stuff out there.
Just read your thing, and that's very funny. Hit the board game store and audition players. You're number 35, please.
Well, so what can you may about, have to try. We got lucky. I feel very lucky that you and I played. We met. I bought some used board games from Greg, and we sit down to play Arkham that both of us were interested in playing, and we just got lucky. We meshed, but.
Well, I occasionally. Well, that's all other story. I'm not gonna. But I remember. I'm not gonna divulge the answers to this question, but I remember being there's more I think the second time we got together to play Arkham, I said, "Okay, Jesse, I'm going to ask you a couple questions." It's I'm like, what is your political affiliation and what is your religious affiliation? It's like that.
That was because we were going to play a game. It was because we were going to play a campaign, so we were both
was not necessarily those two questions, but they were like that, and I was I got to know these answers because it might be difficult for us. It was just checking that you don't have some huge. Because I have family members that are married, two family members married together, family members who have spouses that have completely different political ideologies and stuff, and that's can be a pretty big stumbling block.
I guess I mean politics. I feel like
religion and politics are the two classic things that that people that are very controversial. I would if you're going to spend a lot of time with somebody,
maybe or just.
I also, by the way, this might be an interesting little point. So. I really wanted to enjoy playing through the Arkham Horror campaigns, the card game, Arkham Horror the card game campaigns, and I had already played solo the base box, which is just all-inclusive 1, 2, 3 scenarios, and so I was like, I've already played this, so I'm gonna go and play it with Jesse, and that way I don't ruin any of my content that I haven't played yet, which was the first campaign, which was Dunwich Horror, and so
well, we were both auditioning each other in the sense of if we start playing new content, we can't. It's a long haul. So are we going to be compatible?
In America, just the political thing in America, we're the political divide in America this past year has been very significant, and so that's kind of a thing.
But I am a believer of not bringing politics and religion into board gaming. So if we happen to be pretty compatible, but if we were. Okay, so here's one you are pretty good at, which, or I don't know, but figure out when you need to take a break. Like if you're playing these long 6-hour sections. Now, one of the things you are great at is for certain games like Chronicles of Crime, like I've written a note here about like walk and review the case. Yeah. Like there are certain games that we like that you get wrapped up in, and it's really great to take a break, go walk, get something to eat, and discuss it. Like you have to know when it's time to take a break.
I oftentimes, though, unfortunately, know when I should break, but I'm gotta keep playing, you know, and that's I think like, you know, you kind of always have a good break in the game, but that's kind of more general. Not really it is.
But that the two of us love discussing board games. So like sometimes the most fun part is like take a break or break between games and like talk and walk around. All right, we're almost done here. Dealing with the hard cases. Now these really are hard cases. Like legacy campaign games. These are games where most games are like, well, we disagree, let's try it your way. What's the worst that could happen? But you're playing a legacy game. The weight of some of these decisions are so high, and so the legacy campaigns are one.
Well, hold on. So it's not only that, like, it's like you're going to make this choice that's going to affect the game going forward. So that's number one. But the other thing is that oftentimes for most people, like that first playthrough is going to be the only playthrough they're going to do, or it's like the best experience of that because you're going to have all the secrets revealed. And so you're sort of
huge weight on your shoulders to get it right.
If you spoil it for the other person, like it's going to like really, you know, you're only going to get one shot at it essentially. So I could see why, like, I think, you know, they talk about like whenever they're like, hey, you can like, this is the type of co-op game, legacy game or whatever, where people can come in and out. And I'm like, what are you, nuts? Like, why would anybody do that? Like right now, and I don't think anybody's crazy to do that. I do think it's a little, I would never do that, right? But if somebody else enjoys it, that's totally cool. But like, it just seems to me like that's the kind of thing where you want to like lock yourselves in with just if you have to go with a lower player count than you want to, it's better to do that. I mean, that's the whole tangent.
And for the same reason that you described the legacy games, you're only going to play it once through. The other games that fall into this category might be things like the puzzle, like the escape rooms or the narrative detective ones, where you're only going to play this case once and you want the good ending. And so you're like, if we do it your way and we don't get this, then we can't undo that. We can't do that. So I think for those advanced cases, you have to have some way of having a sort of fallback rule. And the one we use, the one I like, is the thing that says, like, with Pandemic, for example, it's your turn. That's the way. And some of these are like rationalization techniques. Like, okay, it's your turn, so your character gets to make the final decision, and that's what's going to make it okay for me.
Okay, but in a legacy style game, I'm just going to give a counterpoint. Like, if three of the four players are like, don't do that, and you're like, well, it's my turn, I'm going to do that. Like, those other players, like, you're affecting the game for all those other players, and that's like, you got to be like Spock. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Well, I
agree. I mean, agree with what the case you're making, but this one solution is how, like, I played with my friend Zach, Pandemic Legacy 1 and 2, and this was the rationalization that worked for me. Like, if we got to a real disagreement, if it wasn't my turn, I could step back and say, okay, I'm okay. Even if it's a total disaster, I'm okay with your character doing it. And when we play games occasionally, I'll be like, well, it's my turn. I'm going to do this. Like, occasionally you feel like you'll get to the point where you're like, I've talked it out. I can't talk it anymore. And it's my turn, and I'm going to do it. And I do like that as a fallback. Like, if you can't come to an agreement.
I think in general, if you're going to go into a legacy game or like a campaign game that has some real consequences or whatever, I think you pick your group well. You think you got to like, you have to, at the start of the game, at the campaign, legacy game, whatever, I think you got to be like, you got to be like in the beginning of that movie, like you got to be assembling your team, like, you know, like here's my here's my getaway driver, my demolition guy. You have to do it, and like if you're like, well, I feel bad telling this person he can't play with us or that we're not going to include him in this game, it's better to just get that out of the way early. Otherwise, you're still going to have that fight with them. and everybody else is going to have their game ruined anyway. So I think that you have to just make it's like pulling the Band-Aid off. Just do it early, get it over with, because you're just going to save yourself a lot of like headache or heartache later, right? And but also going into it, you got to realize like these other people, you know, if this is important to you, you know, you're going to have to realize that like it might not go the way you want it to go.
That's true too. All right, so last slide here, which is, this gets back to the thing of like stories and everything, which is celebrate your victories. It is just a game, but having an adventure in a game is just as real as having an adventure in the world. There's memories, there's stories, there's funny times, and celebrate it, and celebrate your partner. This gets back to the praise thing. Like, you did it together. It's not just a game. Yeah. It's something to talk about. It's something to reflect on and reminisce about. You've built a little memory there. Yeah. And we got lots of memories.
A core memory.
A core memory. What's that from?
That's from Inside. They build like the core. I think there's a meme.
Oh, I see. The cartoon movie, the Disney.
The Pixar. Yeah.
But we've got lots of memories from our playing board games, and they're really fun. They're fun memories.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's almost just like, be nice to people. Yeah. Like, listen to people. Don't be a jerk to people. Like, it's like...
It's all common sense, but then most self-help books are all common sense. So this was
your
George
Carlin's
self-help video.
He's like, if you go to the store to get self-help, he's like, you don't need it. You just helped yourself. You just went to the store. You don't need it. Go tell the clerk, F you. Like, I don't need the book. I help myself. Like, go home and, you know, it's like... I love that, George Carlin.
All right, guys. So maybe the use of this video is what Greg said. Put a little link on a card, and when you meet someone who's not playing well cooperatively, give them the card so they can watch this video. Yeah. And anything more to say? Any final comments on cooperative games?
I think that's it. I made a couple little notes while we were talking here, and I think that's good. Hopefully this helped you. Maybe it was all common sense. You know. Yeah. But yeah.
So if you did like this video and want to see more videos like this, then subscribe, write a comment, tell us we love talking board games, but sometimes it feels like there's so many topics. Let us know what topic you'd like to hear us talk about, and even consider becoming a Patreon supporter, and we'll see you next time. Yeah.
Like, because this channel exists purely for outtakes.
It is true. Like, there's nothing but a single comment.
It's the only thing I watch.
Like cutting them when they're half off.
You know what the most important thing about comedy is?
Yes, I do.
Timing. Maybe I can make a quick note of like different games that we played recently.
That's a good idea.
I'm not doing this. Let's just go. Well, I mean, we got it all set up and everything. I should have done it.
I'm learning. This is how it works. Like, you got to wait for Greg to make his suggestion, and you don't offer any comment. Don't agree. Don't disagree, because it's going to change. And you don't want to get caught in that switcheroo.
I already suggested a live stream that you shot down.
What did I shoot down?
I said we should play Paleo and Stone Age and do the theme, like the theme of like.
I'll do that too. I'm sorry. I apologize.
And you were like, and then you were like, no, that you said it didn't serve the bean.
I apologize.
But that was Mr. Hyde talking. It wasn't Dr. Jekyll. And Jesse didn't even notice that I switched the blue light to purple because purple's my color.
You don't remember talking about that? Talking about the white
No, we did
balance?
that on our first steering into death thing. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. We didn't get our flow going. We always got to do the intro like 5 times.
All right. We'll see you next time, guys. So I've prepared a bunch of little topics, and we're just going to go through them.
Surprise to me.
Yeah, some of them are a surprise to me.
And a surprise to Jesse is the fact that I changed the lights in the back to be purple because my favorite color is purple, but it's unnoticeable.
You're going to mess up the whole white balance. You've messed up everything now.
I did something completely meaningless.
You've messed up